Biden made a big mistake regarding Russia, but he is still beneficial to us. I don't know if you watched Putin's interview with Pavel Zarubin, which he requested after the president's interview with Tucker Carlson, because he felt that many issues were left unaddressed. But anyway, I will say that during it, the president voiced completely opposite talking points. First, when asked about the extent of Biden's incapacitation, he said that 3 years ago, when he met with him in Switzerland, he didn't notice anything like that. Toth carried on a quite normal conversation and then added, "That's not what we should be looking at. We should be looking at the political position. I believe that the administration's current position is highly damaging and misguided." I told President Biden that at one time. And when asked by Pavel who is better for us than Biden or Trump, Putin answered paradoxically, "Biden, he's a more experienced man, he's predictable, he's an old-school politician. But we will work with any U.S. leader who has the confidence of the American people." Putin's facial expressions were especially valuable during the timing of those words. The paradox is that the president believes that Biden's position is highly damaging and wrong, but Biden is better for us. But it would seem that since Biden's position is wrong, then Trump, who is vocal in saying he will correct that position in 24 hours, will end the conflict with Russia and vice versa, is beneficial to us. So why does the president want Biden to stay in office? And there are two possibilities here. One, Putin decided to shield Trump from accusations of his pro-Russianism from Democrats with his statement and knock that stool out from under their feet, because now Trump can accuse them of the same thing. Second, Putin thinks Biden is actually more favorable to us. If indeed the first option, that is, if the president believes that actually Trump is more favorable to us and just takes him out of the picture, let's look at what the pitfalls are if Trump takes office. It's simple and complicated at the same time. If everything is clear with Biden, no negotiations, no compromises, and a fight to the end, then in the case of Trump, if he is really going to fulfill his campaign promises, we will have to stop halfway and negotiate. Which means that perhaps on some compromises, some security guarantees will be signed, perhaps even a serious treaty, and the situation will be frozen. On the one hand, it is good for our guys to come back from where you know, and we will actively engage in economic development of integration processes with friendly countries within the framework of the IAS and the BRICS, and further building up financial and technological sovereignty. But on the other hand, this is not good, because no matter what wonderful treaties on mutual security guarantees we have signed with them, the next US president can replay everything, withdraw from any treaty or agreement, and once again start pursuing anti-Russian policy and NATO's military expansion into Russia's neighboring countries. Or will start trying to inflame the situation in countries friendly to us. That is, by compromising with Trump, we run the risk that the US will properly prepare for a new round of confrontation with Russia. At a favorable moment for them will come out of the and start a conflict with us again, accusing us of violating any of its clauses. We've seen how this happens many times before. They'll just say again, "We're not doing it against you, and you do what you want." The premise is that it's not against us, it's not against the United States. Thus, in this case, we will achieve short-term goals, we will win a tactical victory, but we will not get reliable and long-term security guarantees. We will not win a strategic and independent victory. Again, under Trump, the US may well start. They don't carry the cycle of their economic and military reinforcement, which is not at all beneficial to us. Let's now consider the possibility that Putin is not tinkering and really thinks Biden is the best option. The Biden administration made many mistakes, but its main mistake was trying to inflict a strategic defeat on Russia. As a result of their inordinate arrogance and pride, the Americans overestimated the political, financial, economic, and military power of their country and underestimated the real political, financial, economic, technological, and military power of Russia, apparently relying on the erroneous assessments of their analysts, and maybe even on the publications of their own paid foreign agents and elves in Russia who were engaged in the fight against bandits, fighting the power and ridiculing their country instead of actually assessing its economic potential and giving them wrong information. They contemptuously called Russia a gasoline colon country, and after the start of the conflict with the US, they fled Russia en masse, thinking that we would have an economic collapse, the people would fall into poverty and hunger, and civil war would break out. Apparently, the Americans, after listening to all sorts of our analysts since 2014, predicting the dollar at 200, have come to believe that Russia's economy is a completely commodity-based economy, and the ruble is weak and vulnerable. Because Biden in the spring of 2022 was broadcasting from high podiums that the Russian economy was once again torn to shreds, and the dollar was already trading at 200 rubles. It was infectious. Western analysts probably also believed in the omnipotence of the US and the weakness of Russia. That's why we've been painted as a 10 or even 20% decline. And we're very much surprised when it turned out to be a paltry minus 1.2%. In other words, all the Western sanctions, all the possible restrictions and ceilings have done less damage to our economy than a pandemic in 2020. Then there was a decline of minus 3.1%. The Biden administration has bet on a quick economic victory over Russia. And if they succeeded, asset freeze, disconnecting our banks from SWIFT, banning currency transactions by the central bank, sectoral sanctions, sanctions from hell, to crush Russia, then no other country in the world would challenge U.S. hegemony. But they miscalculated very badly. We withstood the financial blow, the collective pressure of the West and NATO, and showed the whole world that the Russian saying, "the devil is not as bad as they say he is true." The Americans have created their own problems out of thin air. If previously no one thought about the alternative to the dollar in international trade and the advisability of keeping their assets in dollars and debt securities of the U.S. government, now the replacement of this toxic currency, recommended institutions, and assets for countries that no longer want to obey the U.S. has become the most urgent issue. After all, Americans have begun to use them as weapons. And the dollar itself and U.S. debt securities have become toxic to many countries around the world, which means these countries need to look for an antidote. Yes, de-dollarization is not going fast yet, mostly only between countries that have the capacity to do so. Because to exclude the dollar from settlements and mutual trade, it is necessary either to balance the trade balance between countries, which is extremely difficult and time-consuming, or to introduce an alternative international currency for balancing settlements, which will replace the dollar. If the countries of the global non-West decide to, if there is no question of creating an alternative international currency, then the main stage of de-dollarization of the world will begin, and this is where everything is heading. Recall that the BRICS grouping expanded in 2024, and it expanded to include 2 commodity countries that are quite important in terms of supporting the dollar, the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia, which previously traded oil for dollars. But now there are options. But in addition to this major mistake, which has begun to erode U.S. power on the foreign circuit, Biden is making another mistake. He is destroying America's power with his reckless immigration policies, which again is to our advantage. But what Trump promises to stop? Well, the third factor in favoring us, Biden, or the Democrats, is the fact that the Republicans won in the 2022 congressional elections. After that, the Democrats continue to lose popularity. That is, and in the upcoming congressional elections in 2024, they may win again. Republicans. Which means that if a Democratic president comes to power, even if it is not Biden, the internal squabbles between the branches of government in the United States will only increase. And that's good for us. But the best thing for us to do is not look back at the US election at all, but to remember other sayings. He who walks the road will walk the road, and does what he must, and what is destined will be accomplished. That is, to solve the tasks set by the president. That would be a strategic victory for our country.